I wish it wasn't so short. Oh, hey. You're looking good today. Well, now we can get started. Body Armor, if you want to sponsor me. Scared my cat. Ladies and gentlemen, across the fruited plains, today we are going to take a ride on the bald eagle of freedom for a flyby of liberty, soaring across the cancel culture to the city upon a hill and the land of free thought. So come with me, my fellow Americans, as I attempt to take a deep dive and perform a comprehensive analysis of the last 4 years of politics, Obama's setup for the 2016 election, Trump's administration, and the future of our electorate. I'm Ryan Beakey, and this is going to be fun.
People should not be walking around with masks.
It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. I want to be accurate.
Before I knew what was happening, it was over. One of Mr. Phillips' fellow agitators yelled out, "We got him. It's all right here on video. And we won, Grandpa." What I thought was a strange encounter quickly developed into a major news story, complete with video footage. My life changed forever in that one moment. The full war machine of the mainstream media revved up into attack mode. They did so without researching the full video of the incident, without ever investigating Mr. Phillips' motives, or without ever asking me for my side of the story. And do you know why? Because the truth was not important. Advancing their anti-Christian, anti-conservative, anti-Donald Trump narrative was all that mattered. And if advancing their narrative ruined the reputation and future of a teenager from Covington, Kentucky, well, so be it. That would teach him not to wear a MAGA hat. I learned what was happening to me had a name. It was called being canceled. But I would not be canceled. I fought back hard to expose the media for what they did to me, and I won a personal victory. While much more must be done, I look forward to the day that the media returns to providing balanced, responsible, and accountable news coverage. I know President Trump hopes for that too. And I know you'll agree with me when we say that no one in this country has been a victim of unfair media coverage more than President Donald Trump. In November, I believe this country must unite. This is worth fighting for. This is worth voting for. And this is what Donald Trump stands for. Thank you all for listening to me tonight. And one more thing. Let's make America great again.
The year is 2008. Barack Hussein Obama's smile first burst through my outdated ass CRT TV set with the big old box attached on the back. Let me go find something for you, actually. Yeah, so when Obama got elected, I was in her class. Yep, Mrs. Krause, that's her. Wow, my classmates look just as bad as I do. That's not true. That's never true. So, that's me. I look pretty cute. Either high or depressed, probably both. Just a pretty constant state of things. Anyway, sidetracking aside. So I'm this stupid fifth grader, right? Sitting in my class, just excited to be watching TV, not really grasping the full sense of what's happening. I was just happy that Mrs. Krause was killing time, dude. But still, something in me, even as a fifth grader, could feel the situation. I mean, it was the first black president of the United States. How could it not be a huge change? And I thought, hell, this is great. I mean, I think everybody expected there to be a kind of massive change for the country after that point. But holy shit, how the fuck did we get here? I believe in hope. Hope and change. Yeah, hope and change for 8 years was predominantly anti-American, expensive, and racist. Allow me to explain. For 8 years, Republicans in the GOP couldn't criticize the Obama administration, at least openly. They were afraid for years of being labeled a racist, being bigoted. Any outright complaint that you could have had for the Obama administration's handling of the economy, the federal bailout, the failed stimulus package, it didn't matter. It wasn't about policy, it was about the man.
The reforms The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegally. It's not true.
Well, he's in a lot of trouble. Joe Wilson embarrassed himself and embarrassed his entire constituent base, everyone who voted for him.
Disrespect for the office, or is this disrespect specifically for this man? But I do think that there's an element of race here.
The audacity.
6.5 hours later.
Statements were inappropriate. I did. I'm very grateful that the White House, in talking with them, they indicated that they appreciated the call and that we needed to have a civil discussion. My background in that is that I was aware that there were two different amendments on the bill which would have provided for verification.
This is where the popularization of identity politics started. This is important. This is one of the first times on the biggest scale possible, at least in the United States. The President of the United States wasn't judged for his merit. He was not judged predominantly for his record or his accomplishments. Barack Hussein Obama was judged by the color of his skin. So I want to get into the nitty-gritty. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to cover everything from Obama's administration. I mean, the guy signed 276 executive orders alone. I can't cover all of them. So here's what happened. For 8 years, the Obama administration launched an entirely anti-American campaign right under the noses of its people. Certain people saw this. Largely the GOP, if I'm being honest. So for 8 years, we heard Bush's economy, Bush's economy. It's Bush's, it's Bush's. It's not Obama's. He's not in office, dude. It's Bush's, okay? It might be 2015, but it's still Bush's economy, which is funny because when Trump fixed the economy, it was then Obama's, despite the fact that Obama had the slowest economic recovery ever in the history of the United States, the worst recession since the Great Depression, which may not be true anymore after COVID. Those statistics will probably be out at the end of this year. But the point to make is that he sucked with the economy. I mean, do you remember the $1.8 trillion figure originally for the stimulus package? You might have been young, you might not have cared. So to get the economy started up again, Obama naturally figured, let's infuse some money. Let's sprinkle it in like fairy dust. People love that. You remember the Obama phones? They were giving them out in the streets and everyone was like, oh my God, I got my fucking jitterbug, dude. You see this? So when the stimulus was implemented, originally we were given a $1.8 trillion figure. That was back in 2009 when Christina Romer suggested that figure is probably about what we'd need. Lawrence Summer then comes along and overrides Christina Romer. He says, you don't need 1.8 trillion, you need less money, so we're just gonna go do that real quick. And rather than focus on job creation, what we want is Obamacare. So now we're gonna focus on that. A lot of the times what the Democrats will do is a bait and switch, right? So the problem will be the economy. They give you money for the economy, they say they're gonna fix it, right? It doesn't fix it, and then they move on to the next issue. That's very common today. So interestingly enough, in 2010, we had midterm elections. So this happens every 2 years. A lot of congressional seats go up in the House and the Senate. The Republicans won huge. The GOP, I think, took over more than 1,000 seats. 1,000 seats combined in Congress and state legislatures. That's more than any single party has gained, or respectively, any single party has lost in the modern era. Obama set that up, and that was a precedent for things to come. You may recall the Tea Party, the vilified Tea Partiers. They were crazy. Oh, my dad pulled up. The Tea Party was horribly misidentified as a group of alt-right, ultra-white nationalists that just wanted to tear down all of our institutions and kill the black man and go out with their AR-15s and cause a ruckus, right? That was what they were labeled as. The Tea Party, in Congress at least, not including, any people outside, had 60 Republicans in it. And that was out of 242 currently in Congress at the time. So that still left 180 Republicans to be swayed by Obama. It's not as if there was such staunch opposition to him that nothing could be accomplished. He didn't want to accomplish it. He was absent. He'd be playing golf just like Trump would, that they'd crucify him for. But it's okay if Obama does it. He can be distant. His distance from politics is a hallmark of his administration, both from Republicans and the Democrats. He didn't really want to talk and argue. What he wanted to do was lay down policy. That's why he instituted so many executive orders. quickest and most efficient way for him to do that without arguing, with remaining distant, was executive orders. 276 of them, in fact. And maybe most notably, the last one, his final day in office. That's interesting. Executive Order 276, the final one, right? This is the executive order that legally set up, at the time, Spygate. And if you don't know what Spygate is, then holy shit, you're gonna have your fucking mind blown. So why is Obama's administration even relevant? Why am I going into this? Well, it's important to know because the 8 years prior naturally precipitated what you saw in the 2016 election, whether you realized it or not. And that's one of the things I think a lot of the political pundits of the time, all the polling data suggested Hillary was going to win in a landslide. I mean, Craig, she was up, I think, 9 points in Wisconsin before she lost it. I'm in the purple state of Pennsylvania. And when I was at Pitt 4 years ago, me and my friend went into the election booth and we were like, dude, there's no way. There's no way that this guy's gonna win. But fuck it. We'll do it anyway, because I can't vote for a criminal. So what did Obama do in his 8 years? Let's really look at the deep dive, okay? We got some notes here. We'll just line a little bit, list off a few others, and we'll look at them. We have Benghazi, the Iran deal, Obamacare, ISIL/ISIS, because they refuse to call it that, also Al-Qaeda, a pro-China agenda, pro-Iran agenda, an anti-American agenda, and an anti-white agenda. The last one is probably the most controversial of those claims, but it's not false. And I want you to look at the evidence. Michelle Obama, on her podcast last week, actually, we have this clip right back here. We're going to play it for you. I say we like I'm a studio. I'm one guy. I'll play you the clip, and I want you to really listen to what she says. I mean, this is a woman who was at the forefront of the world for probably 8 years. I mean, everyone knows who Michelle Obama is. How could you not? I don't think many people dislike her. I've never really gotten that sense. I've never personally been a fan of their family because of how they politicize everything. Everything. Here's Michelle Obama.
I've had it several times where I've presented to members of my team, people that I've worked with, peers, go downstairs in the elevator, go out to lunch, and they walk right by you on the street. You're standing in line next to them at Sweetgreen, and they look right through you. They assume they don't know you. They have no use for you, and yet you just help solve their legal problem or help make them some money or save them some money. But then when you're out in the world, you're just an invisible person.
When the girls were little, this is when I was First Lady. Mm-hmm. I am Michelle Obama, yes, the First Lady of the United States.
Of America.
Of America. And we had just finished taking the girls to a soccer game. We were stopping to get ice cream. And there was a line. And once again, when I'm just a Black woman, I noticed that white people don't even see me. They're not even looking at me. So I'm standing there with two little Black girls, another Black female adult. They're in soccer uniforms. And a white woman cuts right in front of us to order. Like she didn't even see us. So I stepped up and I said, excuse me. I said, you don't see us, 4 people standing right here. You just jumped in line. She didn't apologize. She never looked me in my eye. She didn't know it was me.
So there you have it. Michelle Obama's oppressed. I don't know if you knew, but she's way more oppressed than you. Way more oppressed than all the poor-ass white guys in Appalachia. You know, way more oppressed than, say, you or I. I mean, Christ, we didn't even recognize her. A white person didn't even recognize her. And they cut in front of her in line? Oh my God. Oh my God. Holy shit, Michelle. Wow. It's almost like that's a normal human thing that happens to everybody. But that's the thing. That's what the left has done lately. They take these normal experiences that everybody goes through, and then they'll label themselves something different. By removing yourself from your sex and saying and stating that you're something else, you can use this with oppression. You can use this with gender identity. You can use this with political identity. You can use this with your race. You can use this with everything. They're taking away their own individuality by using the things that make them unique. Say, if I'm a guy and I like maybe some typically feminine things, I like to accessorize. So then if I'm on the left, I might say, I'm intersex, or I'm another gender, or I'm a female now, I'm trans. By doing that, you're removing the very thing that just made you interesting to begin with. You were unique prior. You were your own. When I would switch then from being a male to whatever else I wanted to call myself, I would lose all the unique characteristics that I had as a male. Now I'm just a female or a trans guy with feminine tendencies. And now in some twisted way, I've lost part of myself by changing. What's interesting to note though, Obama's record isn't really talked about. More of the lasting legacy of what it meant for him to be as the first black president. And of course, Michelle staying in the political spotlight at the DNC. And I love how she says she's not political, like she doesn't want to be political. And then one of the first things I remember hearing her say as a kid was, I've never been proud of my country until it elected my husband. That's a pretty shitty thing to say, right? I'm not proud of my country because I'm not president right now. There's no way I could be an American and live here if I'm not in charge. Look at me with all my privilege. Oh my God, are those coats? None of those are mine. This isn't even my house. I pay to be here. But what's critically important is to do your own research. Look up things on yourself. Form your own opinions. Decide what makes sense and what doesn't by comparing sources. You're naturally going to find that certain things lean one way and another thing leans the other. Truth isn't always in the middle, but it's usually some amalgamation of the two. So it's important to combine sources and critically think. This isn't a hard concept, but it's one that's been largely lost on our population, especially in the era of cancel culture and social media. I mean, being part of the woke crew is the new norm. You want to be cool, right? So post that little black square, dude. What the hell are you doing? Post the fist. You're not standing up for Black lives if you don't post about it, right? I mean, God, you're not cool. Do you even care about racial justice, bro? Racial justice? Scene change. Again. So where are we now? Around 2015, right? Gotta have somebody new in the White House for the Dems. So who do they choose as their champion? Who do they elect from their massive selection of bench? Hillary Clinton. That's who they picked. And I thought she was the worst candidate possible. But then they picked Biden this time and surprised me yet again. So, good job, Democrats. You're keeping me on my toes. That being said, a lot of people looked at Hillary and they didn't see a terrible candidate. They saw a strong, powerful woman who, Secretary of State, wife of the president. I mean, she had a pretty good background coming into it, right? Let's look at the background. So you've probably heard of the Clinton Express, the Clinton Foundation, Jeffrey Epstein, WikiLeaks, 33,000 deleted emails, 2 private servers, BlackBerry encryption that was questioned back in 2009. I mean, I can keep going. I think she killed some people. Maybe not her directly. I mean, no proof, all allegations. Hillary and her husband have been up to some shady dealings throughout the years, and it's pretty evident with the amount of trips that Bill took on the Epstein Express. But that's not Hillary. That's none of it's proof. Except she was Secretary of State and had 3 private servers, one for her phone, one for her emails, which was the one the FBI investigated. I mean, the FBI investigated this, right? The same FBI, which was instigated by the Mueller report and Schiff for 3 years diving into a Russia probe that didn't exist. In fact, there was no connection ever established between Trump and Russia following the 2016 election. Russia may have preferred that he win. They prefer it again. China prefers Biden win this year. Every country has their own opinions. I don't see why Russia's opinion of Trump was the de facto defining factor of the Americans' view. What always baffled me was that just because Russia may have supported Trump and he had done business dealings in Russia before, that doesn't make him an agent. The logic there does not follow. There's no evidence that would suggest he did anything with Russia to help them. What has Russia done now? Since 2016, almost all of Trump's actions have been anti-Russia too. I mean, hell, we put in defense systems in Crimea. Would you look at that? Do you remember when Russia invaded Crimea? It's okay. I thought it was 2016. I thought it was under Trump. Nope. 2014. Russia just invaded another country, and where was Obama? Or playing golf, probably. So with Hillary, things started getting down to the wire, especially with the WikiLeaks right before. I mean, hell, Julian Assange probably was the biggest reason Hillary lost. Trump was kind of shooting himself in the foot a few times prior, but all of the polls suggested she was going to win. I mean, I think she was up like 9 points in Wisconsin before she lost it. The entire media narrative surrounding Hillary Clinton prior to the election was almost a too big to fail kind of mentality, where her name carried so much weight, her identity as a woman carried so much power that she couldn't possibly lose. Who could possibly beat her? The guy that said grab him by the pussy? Hillary's biggest downfall was ironically also Trump's biggest downfall. Themselves. It's their personality. Because even though Trump was so unlikable, at least to many back then and still now, she was even more unlikable. She had blood on her hands, to me. She lied numerous times about coming under fire on the tarmac. She let people die in Benghazi and never took credit for it. Never decided to stop shirking the blame for all of the things she's done wrong. This brings me into a big topic, the media, and the media's portrait and portrayal of especially political figures, which is now just about everybody, including everyone from Kaepernick to Tom Hanks to Whoopi Goldberg. Everybody's political. People in the media are intimately familiar with this practice. Listen to what Barry Weiss, formerly of the New York Times, had to say about their current political climate. Twitter is not on the masthead of the New York Times, but Twitter has become its ultimate editor, as the ethics and mores of that platform have become those of the paper. The paper itself has increasingly become a kind of performance space. Stories are chosen and told in a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences, rather than to allow a curious public to read about the world and then draw their own conclusions. Draw their own conclusions. That's exactly the point I'm trying to make here. The media force feeds you public images like never before. They tell you what to think. They present things in a certain light so that you're convinced and conditioned over years and years. You've heard so many times how terrible Trump is, right? How he's all the sexual allegations. He hates women. He's rude towards people. He's racist. He doesn't care about the black man, right? These are things that have been drilled into your head by the media for at least the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, most people at least have some sort of background sense that Trump's a bad guy, right? And it's because of the neuroplasticity of the mind being reconditioned by all of this media talk, being bombarded on social media. I can't open Snapchat without now this showing up and freaking Peter Hamby telling me that we're fucked again.
My body, my choice. Open Ohio now! Open Ohio now!
Well, that didn't take long. You can't get dissenting opinions anymore, but that's the work we need to do. That's the work. You're not going to be an intelligent, well-rounded person taking only one source. You'll never get the full picture of even your own life if you only look at it from your own perspective. Taking into account others and other people's perspectives, thoughts, and ideas are what makes this country great. Free dialogue and open discourse are what allows the crucible of politics to really work. I mean, federalism doesn't exist like this if you don't try things out, if you don't have the discussions. But now, all we're told is say their name. If you don't post everywhere, if you don't put the little black square, if it's not abundantly clear yet, the media's trying to bait a race war. They're trying to make this a black versus white thing. And they're succeeding. They are, in some ways, achieving this. I mean, you can't open Twitter without it just sounding like an echo chamber for BLM.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face.
I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
look as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
That's it right there. Pull it up.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Of course Black Lives Matter, but all Black Lives Matter. That's something they don't want you to say either. Terry Crews got chastised by Don Lemon on CNN for saying all Black Lives Matter, because that's not what they want you to focus on. They want you to focus on the incredibly small minority of people who are killed by police. Most of them, you know, this is a controversial thing to say, most of those killings were good shoots. In fact, just last year, the United States had 13 unarmed African Americans killed by police. And unarmed doesn't mean not dangerous. You can be unarmed and still lunging at a police officer. If you remember at the Wendy's, he was unarmed and he stole one of the tasers, shot a cop, ran away, and then got shot for his trouble. But that was racist. I want you to consider this honestly if you can. Are 13 shootings in a country of 330 million, is that indicative of systemic police racial violence? Is that indicative of a system that's been set up to target the African American man or woman? I don't think it is. I don't think it's indicative of that. I think it's indicative of certain people making poor decisions. And I think individual responsibility needs to come back. One of the greatest social notations that anthropologists have looked at from the early 20th century is that when you take police out of neighborhoods, this happened very frequently in the early 1900s, especially within Black communities. White communities basically said, listen, you're on your own. You can take care of yourselves. And there were no police. Crime rose exponentially. This will happen again. That's their plan. They don't want to help the African American community. Look at the last time your state or city has had a Republican mayor. Look at where the riots are happening. Every place you look, it's a blue mayor. It's a blue governor. Don't even get me started on Portland. So if you don't know what Spygate is, maybe you'd look it up on Wikipedia, right? Maybe you'd just take a little look. Let's look it up. Let's see what it shows. Oh, it's a conspiracy theory. That's right. It's just an alt-right crazy conspiracy theory. It never happened. It's just in your head. You imagined it. Wrong. Spygate's proven. It's been proven definitively, in my opinion, by A.G. Barr, Trump, the Mueller report, Carter Page, all of the stories. Carter Page was a Trump assistant for the 2016 election. He was illegally wiretapped by the FBI, used to fuel the fire for the Russia investigation. They illegally applied for the FISA warrant. There were 17 errors within that application. 17. What that means is that they 17 times faked, produced, came up with a story, derived their own narrative for a reason why spying on Trump was necessary. It wasn't. It was necessary to them because they needed him out of the White House. They can't affect change if they can't make the executive orders. Are you starting to see where this comes together? The FBI under Obama was used as a tool to promote the investigation into Trump. Not only that, but Comey continued to use it for the next 3 years to fuel, you guessed it, the impeachment trials. And of course, by the time that they got to the Senate, no one wanted to listen. They basically just went back into the script and swapped out everything that said Russia for Ukraine. Listen to the call. It's not bad. Trump just did what every other politician does ever. Hey, maybe you help us out? We'll help you out a little bit. Obama did the same thing with Ukraine. In fact, he withheld aid for them. Trump never withheld aid. Scenery change. Trump brought us out of the Paris Accords, right? You may have recalled the left freaking out and saying, "Oh, there's no way Trump could do this. He's such a terrible person. How could he possibly take us out? It's climate change. You want the earth for your kids, right? You must be killing children if you're leaving the Paris Accords. What's wrong with you? Orange man bad." We have reduced our carbon emissions since the Paris Accords withdrawal by more than any other country. And we're not even part of it. Doesn't that sound to you like more of a liberal agenda? Yet they won't even recognize what he's accomplished, or at least the administration has accomplished. But you didn't know that because the media won't tell you, and that's the point. The media is anti-American. They're anti-free speech. They're anti-you. They don't want you to succeed. They want to be in charge of you. They want to sit on their ivory tower and chastise and social justice warrior everybody. In the words of Joe Biden, come on, man. You're not fooling anybody. So, Spygate didn't work. Nothing worked. Years. 3 years of them just going to town on him daily. A new scandal a day, it seemed like, for half of it. It was, you ever hear the phrase, throw the shit on the wall and see what sticks? Their strategy from day one was bombard the public image of Trump with negativity and scandalous nature that no matter what the truth was, it was just drowned out by the smear scam. It was drowned out by all the pages from CNN, Vox, MSNBC.
And it's a diversionary tactic. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You demonize, and then we call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic, and it's self-evident.
Think of all the right-wing outlets you know of. Fox. So what do the Dems do? We're post-impeachment. We're post-Spygate. 3 years of scamming half the American populace into thinking that Trump's a terrible man and that everybody who voted for him is a racist and a deplorable sack of shit, just like Hillary said. Super predators. Oh, wait, that was about black people. My bad. So what do they do next? COVID. You ever hear of the Plandemic? The Kung Flu? You know, the China virus.
This the Chinese virus. He says ethnicity does not cause the virus. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. I want to be accurate.
A lot of people are going to have their eyes open this December when all of the information comes out about this. Let me briefly lay out the timeline for you. In November of 2019, China already knew that it existed within their country. They shut down any reporter in their communist regime willing to spread that message. If you recall, back in January, there was that iconic video of the one doctor from Wuhan with the face shield, and she was telling everybody how terrible this really was and what sort of outbreak was meant to come. And thank God for people like her, or this could have been even worse for us. So in late January, Trump closes down the borders before the CDC officially recommends to do so. The CDC, the WHO, all of these alphabet soup organizations, they are also the left. The left, as an institution, is more than politics. It's your life. The left now, in 2020, constitutes all of Hollywood, just about. Almost all of the media, nearly all of the TV networks, Netflix, Hulu, news outlets. They own the bureaucracy, all the nameless government officials that affect policy behind closed doors. They own Washington. That being said, the radicalized left is the single greatest threat I think that this country has ever faced. It's domestic, it's insidious, it's dismantling the United States from the inside without people really noticing. They're ruining confidence in our electorate. Do you feel confident that the vote's gonna go well this year? What do you think about mail-in balloting? Because that came up pretty quick. For a whole week, that was all Pelosi could talk about. Oh, Trump won't fund it, Trump won't fund it. He gave $10 billion to the Postal Service. Sorry, Nancy. And she dropped it. You haven't heard about it, intentionally. When Trump shut the borders down, he was received with so much criticism from the left. Do you remember? People like Pelosi and AOC were going out and they're saying, hey, come out here, come to Chinatown. Let's not be racist towards the Chinese.
Mark, businesses, are they really hurting there?
Well, to hear some business owners tell it, Janelle, this coronavirus scare has had an enormous impact. Speaker Nancy Pelosi told me she came here to Chinatown to combat fear.
That's what we're trying to do today, is to say everything is fine here. come because precautions have been taken. The city is on top of the situation.
I love it, Nancy. I love it. I'm so glad you came. Oh, you make my store famous.
As Pelosi walked from the cookie factory to lunch at a dim sum restaurant, she hugged friends, waved to onlookers, and downplayed the racism issue, saying she understands people are concerned about China.
I'm here. We feel safe and sound, so many of us coming here.
We can't call it, first of all, we cannot call it the China virus because things like that's racist. It's not from China. It's COV. Let's just call it COV. Call it the flu. Because that would be racist. It didn't come from China. Just like the Spanish flu didn't come from Spain. They criticized him for months. I think it was probably mid-April by the time people started to go back and retcon their entire story. Obviously, that's the way that the liberal narratives work. What they do is they go back and reframe whatever they wanted to say. When they said that they didn't want the lockdown to start, now it became they didn't want it to start that late. Now they wish he had done it sooner. Don't be fooled by that. I want to hit you with a few facts about Corona, very quick. And I encourage you to research this on your own. On August 31st, the CDC confirmed, by their numbers, not mine, not the United States, this is their numbers, that up to 98% of all coronavirus deaths included, on average, at least 2.4 prior conditions before they died. What that means is that of the 176,000, I think that we're at right about now, that died, 2% of them, 2%, around 6,000 people, only died from COVID. Does that change the way that you think about this? We had the biggest economy in the world before this started. The Dow was at record highs. Black unemployment was at the lowest it's ever been. And we shut everything down because a good economy is good for Trump's reelection. A good economy shows that, hey, maybe his last 4 years, he didn't set us all on fire. The U.S. is still here, I think, outside my door. I could be wrong. It might just be a nuclear wasteland by now. I mean, that's what the Dems told me for all of the election up before 2016, that if this man made it in, Orange Man turned whole world orange. There'd be no USA left. Orange Man bad. But it didn't happen. So they had to make it happen with Corona. Why are we still locked down? Why are we still wearing masks? The efficacy of masks has been nowhere near proven. Nowhere near. I remember back in July, I heard something about a study. It was like a combination of 12 studies that rated the efficacy of all the masks on a percentage basis. So if you wore, for instance, an N95, you reduce the spread of COVID by a certain number. I think something like, of those combination of 12 studies, they found that most masks, almost nearly all of the ones that people wear, like cloth masks and, the ones that you pull up like that, don't do shit. In fact, the ones that are the tube socks, the ones that I'll wear for snowboarding, they actually increase the spread because you're so used to, you're touching your face. It's increased contact being close to you. Don't take that as me saying don't wear a mask. I think that masks can still be effective, especially something like a medical or surgical mask, but just look at what Fauci said back in March.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
And can you get some schmutz sort of staying inside there?
Of course, of course.
These people constantly change the narrative to fit what they need for the current time and day. And that brings me to our last topic, the riots, the protests, and where we go from here. I just, listen to this backward logic for a second. You may remember back when BLM first came out, the self-proclaimed trained Marxist organization that is really a domestic terrorist group along with Antifa and the radical left. All the same thing. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon.
Oh, it's just horrible. And now...
Wasn't that fun? Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I remember that, chanting that. And then, of course, the hands up, don't shoot, that was empirically false and proven to be wrong, all that fun stuff. They disappear and they come back when it's convenient, when it's an election cycle. What was happening last year? Do you even remember last year? This one's been so fucked up. I mean, outside of the Ukraine scandal, right? That was the big one. But it was proven wrong. And it ended with the impeachment and then the acquittal of Trump, fairly. Of course, the House is going to vote for it, but people don't like to know how Congress works anymore. It's just easier to be ignorant, right? We could just yell and go, oh, he should have been impeached. Oh, he should have been impeached. I thought he was impeached. Why isn't he gone yet? The death of George Floyd was a tragedy, but not in the way that you think. His death has been so distorted by the media. First, we heard that this innocent black man was choked for 8 minutes on the ground for no reason and killed. That's pretty fucked up. I don't think anybody supports that. What Derek Chauvin did is unanimously criticized. I don't think there's one person I've heard that goes, you know him? Good cop. Good move. I like that. I like seeing the knee on the neck. For 8 minutes, that's my benchmark. I need at least 8 minutes. No, nobody thought that. But the media took that narrative and they immediately beset us on each other. They withheld information about that instance for months. You didn't see the second video until July. And that was intentional. They didn't want you to know the full story. They didn't want you to know he was having trouble breathing prior. They didn't want you to look at the medical examiner reports that suggested that even if Derek Chauvin had never touched the man, that he probably would have died from a lethal dose of fentanyl found within his system. They elect to these messianic figures like Obama to sainthood. I mean, Jacob Blake was not a good guy. He had sexually assaulted his girlfriend prior. There was already a warrant out when the police went to her house in Kenosha. That's what they were there for. He stole her car keys and wouldn't give them back, and he brought his children, putting them in harm's and in danger. Why does that make him a good person? How should the cops have reacted? I mean, the man said he had a weapon, they had guns trained on him, and he continued to move. Continued to walk away, and he reached for a knife. When do the cops get to retaliate? What is the appropriate action there? It seems reasonable to me that they could possibly think he's reaching for a gun or something. I mean, he said he had a weapon. They don't know. There's no handbook on how to handle these types of situations, but I think that they handled it pretty well. Take George Floyd, for instance. Both of the medical examiner reports said that had a lethal dose of fentanyl in him, even without asphyxiation coming into play. If you watched both of the videos that came out, especially the second one that they hid for months, I wonder why. You'll see that he was saying things like, I can't breathe, far before he was ever on the ground. They took him out of the cop car because he couldn't breathe in it. They were being very nice to him the whole time. If you listen to the dialogue, he's saying, can you please roll the windows down? I can't breathe. I'm claustrophobic back here. Of course, when he finally gets into the car, he develops claustrophobia, but he was high out of his mind, dude. He was tripping on fentanyl. I would be kind of crazy too. The police worked with him up until that point.
Can you watch that car? Just make sure no one goes in it. I hear you, but you're gonna face the door right now. Listen up, stop.
I don't do anything. I don't do anything y'all tell me to do, man. Please crack it for me and stuff, man. I am claustrophobic for real, officer.
You got him?
Can you please crack it for me, please?
Yes, I'm
back. Stay with me, man.
I will.
Please stay with me, man. Thank you. God, man. Okay.
Grab a seat.
Okay.
I'll roll the windows down, okay?
Please don't take a seat. I'm going in, Mr. Officer. I'm going in. No, you're not. I gotta go in. Take a seat.
Grab a seat, man.
Man, y'all don't believe me, Mr. Officer. Take a seat. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy, man. Take a seat. Y'all, I'm gonna die here. Take a seat. I'm gonna die, man. You need to take a seat right now. When I start breathing, it's gonna go off on me, man. Okay, let me count to three. And I'm going in. Please. No. Take a seat. I can't choke. I can't breathe, officer. Please. Fine. My wrist, man. Please. I can't take this, man. Okay. I'm on the ground.
Get in the squad.
Jacob Blake's story was highly politicized, and he wasn't a good guy. I'm sorry. Look at the priors. Just because you're killed by a cop doesn't make you a good person. Usually, if you're killed by a cop, you're doing something wrong. Usually, if you're being attacked or shot by a police officer, but all the you've done something to instigate that. Suggest bad cops do exist. All of the true physical empirical evidence that we have reported doesn't suggest any semblance of racism in our police force. In fact, most major cities, the police force is largely minority. In a lot of cases, they make up the majority. You want to say a name? Say David Dorn's name. Say the name of the black police captain that just went in responding to a security call and was killed by looters and rioters. The people in the streets, at least now, they're not there for racial justice. They're not even really there for internet clout. They want Nikes. They want a TV. Dude, if I could get a TV right now, I would. Look at this piece of shit. Thing's like 5 inches big. So I get it. I get why people go out and riot. From a human condition, it makes sense. If I could go loot a McDonald's and just take like a year's supply of hash browns from it, I would. But it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it not condemnable. It doesn't make it justice. Blacks burning down black businesses in minority neighborhoods and seeing that as racial justice is one of the most backwards things I've ever heard in my life. How are you helping yourselves? By burning your cities. What is CHAZ Chop? Do you want to live there? If you want to live there, secede.
Somebody's saying, can I walk to Pine and 13th? Yeah, I can walk up there. I do see some, oh, shit.
In my heart, I knew it was my son now. This was my son because, I wouldn't want nobody else's son. And man, this is incredible. These kids and the kids that passed, what happened the other day, all this on this child. Man, this is incredible. These are kids, man. I'm 50 years old. Man, these are kids, man. They should have been stopped this a long time ago. It's starting to get, excuse me, but it's getting to the point. It's getting.
Gotcha.
I'm so sorry.
Just really.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Anderson. I can only say this as a dad. You want to break Sean Hannity? I'm a pretty tough guy.
If you hate the United States so bad, if you want to completely change its traditions, if you want to completely redefine and transform what makes the Republic so good, then don't stay here. In today's politics, there are two views, largely. You either like America or you don't. You either think America is worth fighting for, that the principles that we were founded on, that the Constitution was a promissory note, that it set up the foundation for the greatness that this country could achieve. And obviously, no country is perfect. We were founded by men, but we choose to be ruled by laws. Those laws were imperfect, but for years and years, we try and make them better. That's what Congress is for. That's why we elect people. That's why we bring fresh ideas and have thought. We want to have that dialogue to get the best policies and the best actions for the people of the United States. I mean, it seems like a simple concept. But then the opposing view, the 1619 Project view, the disintegrationist view, is that there's no reason that any of these systems should exist anymore, that all of them are inherently unchanged from the moment that they were set in stone. Nothing has changed from 1619 when the first slave was brought here by a black man. Yup, the first slave owner in the United States was actually black, and he owned another black guy. Their argument is that nothing's changed. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Act, it's still Jim Crow, basically. You can't go out without getting lynched. But when you look at what's actually happening, there are certain people that are doing lynching right now. They're lynching cops. They're threatening to blow up the White House. They're threatening to come into your cities.
In the minutes before the police with the bikes showed up, we were completely encircled and surrounded. We were surrounded by people who were screaming in our faces, yelling that they were going to F us up, screaming, say her name. At first, I was trying to look in their eyes and trying to have any kind of reason or to see someone as a human being, and I realized they did not see us as human beings. We were Trump supporters, so they absolutely despised us. Even though if we were ever in in a situation and maybe could have talked to some of those folks and they knew about Rand's background in criminal justice reform and the things that I've spoken out on, we could have had agreement.
The rioters and the protesters are Black Lives Matter. They are also Antifa, and they are also the left. At this point, the media intentionally conflated them for 5 months. And for 3 months, we've had constant riots nightly in Portland, where Ted Wheeler still refuses to accept federal aid. This is Trump's fascistic America. This is Trump's America. Look at what he does. It's your city. You're failing them, and you should be sent to jail for the things that you've done to your town. It's criminally insane. I mean, I think like Oswald Cobblepot could probably run freaking CHAZ chat better than you could, dude.
You wanted a war. You got one. No! It's gonna be happening.
So they'll build these narratives. They want you to think that all of the rioters are really just protesters. They're really just people out there saying they want justice for Jacob Blake and Breonna Taylor, who was totally not involved in drug trafficking in any way, or Michael Brown, who totally said hands up, don't shoot, and definitely didn't try and get the gun from the cop, or George Zimmerman, who was just defending his home, but despite the fact he was a Hispanic, identified numerous times as white, because we're not trying to bait race, right? We're just describing his obvious white complexion, his white Hispanic complexion. He's white. Don't allow yourself to have the wool pulled over your eyes just because Cuomo and the Talking Heads and Don Lemon chastise you into believing something that it is that way. It's not. Most things are not as they seem. Most things are far more complex. Boy, oh boy. So if you remember back in May, right around when the George Floyd death occurred, we were still pretty hot into the coronavirus stuff, right? Coronavirus was so bad. We were in the thick of it. Cases were growing, getting a second surge. Everybody should be worried. But then it became okay to protest. Then it became okay to virtue signal. Because the virus is woke. It knows that if you have the correct political ideology, it will not attack you. If you stand up for racial justice, virus won't come near. It's a woke virus, dude. See its genetic coding and literally says WOKE. Like ATGC. Adenine, thymine, guanine, TG. Even so far back as Ferguson and Baltimore back when Biden was VP, which, by the way, what did he do for the riots then?
Nothing.
The shell has spoken.
I mean, he seems to have such a surefire, confident plan on how to deal with it now, though no one's heard anything empirically on what he plans to actually do, except defund the police, reimagine them, and ban fracking is also noted worth. You know, being from PA, kind of like a little bit of frack action. That's just me, you know. I like a good economy. You know, fossil fuels are still a little necessary. We can't really power the whole world on wind turbines yet. I don't know if you knew that.
The Green New Deal is a piece of propaganda that will cost $97 trillion.
And they're trying to slide it into the police reform bill. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun how they like to get two at once there? Two birds with one stone. We're just going to take care of systemic racism and spend $97 trillion really quick. Hope you don't mind if you just slide your debit card this way. I already know the pen. It's cool. So months later, the polls started coming in. CNN finally got a hard look at Rasmussen, which typically they like to write off because, you know, everything that leans right is obviously false, fake, and fascistic, I think. I don't know. Fascism's completely lost its sense of meaning at this point. Nobody really knows what a fascist is, and I encourage you to maybe actually consider what a fascist is, because one party is, and it's not the one with the elephant on the front. Like, the talking points all went out on Sunday and everyone started spouting shit on Monday because every Democratic person in media all of a sudden acknowledged the riots. You notice that? Did you notice that? It's currently September 1st. Billy Joe Armstrong is sleeping. Their Marxist regime must have some pretty bad internal polling, because it seems like the media was just set on fire this weekend. All of a sudden, we saw the fires. For real. You know, fiery, but mostly peaceful.
Christine, Laura, what you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin over the course of the night. A second night. One
of my favorites. Love that. We got two of them now. There's actually two instances of that on, I think, MSNBC and CNN. It's pretty fun. Fiery, but mostly peaceful protests. Just like John Wilkes Booth was a pretty good, but slightly violent actor. Only at times. These people aren't protesting. They're not protesting anything. They're rioting. They're trained Marxists. Look at the BLM website. click on their Fund Me page, see where you donate to, because it takes you right to the DNC website. Isn't that funny? How BLM and DNC are so intertwined like that. Also, interesting to note, look up George Soros. Check out this guy. He's old, but he funds BLM. And then, of course, you have Antifa, anti-fascist, which the irony is lost on so many people. It's really funny. They go out and cosplay with BLM. They scream and riot and burn down buildings. So where do we go from here? Hell, we have Pelosi calling freaking federal agents the Gestapo and stormtroopers.
I take responsibility for trusting the word of a neighborhood salon that I've been to over the years many times, and that when they said, well, we're able to accommodate people one person at a time.
What do we make of this political climate? How do we move forward? Can we move forward? Or are we on a course for inevitable civil war? You know, are people willing to listen to the other side now? Are we beyond the point of no return? Have we crossed the event horizon into political disordinate? I don't think so. I think every time the election cycle comes around, you hear this is the most important election of your life. But I do think this one is true. I think that if Biden wins, we could go down that path. I mean, he's a figurehead for the far left. He's said this numerous times. He's a transitional candidate. He's not really going to be the president. It's going to be Kamala. She should be ready to be the president by day one. Could have just said it then. And of course, you have the hypocrisy within the own Democratic Party. They're going to tear themselves apart at some point. They have been hijacked and taken over by the far left. Liberalism is at serious risk. I mean, at least conservatives know what we are, and we know we're hated. But liberals in the left have a very interesting fight going on. Traditional liberals, traditional people like Barry Weiss. But now, the new norm is socialism. The new norm is Marxism. If you're not 100% in Bernie Sanders' camp, you're not in the commune. You're not wanted. And thus, you will be canceled. And most likely pushed to the right. I mean, look at all the Democrats that came to the RNC and said, this is typical. This is sadly the way things are. That the party of tolerance ain't very tolerant. In fact, they're so intolerant, they will smite, smear, and discourage anybody looking to spread the truth. What this really is going to be, what the left wants it to be, is a referendum on Trump. Do you like Trump? Do you like Zaddy Trump? Doesn't his personality peeve you off a little bit? Aren't you still worried going into the next election cycle? He's not going to be, very, very dependable. Do you feel safe right now in Donald Trump's America? Do you feel safe losing all these jobs with COVID spread? That's not what this election's about. This election is almost entirely not about Trump. It's almost entirely about Biden and what they're going to do. Listen, Trump has a record now. You can look at it. Go and see the things that he's done. See the legislative changes he's made. See all of the help that he has brought towards the black community. See the help he's done. He's gotten rid of NAFTA. That's why I voted for him. I hated that fucking trade deal, dude. I just want our economy to be good. I think that the United States can be an incredible country if we just see it like that. But that's not the narrative that you want to have anymore. Trump pulled us out of wars. He got us out of Iran. He's instituted peace in the Middle East, dude. First time since 1992, I think it was, that we've had a deal like this with the UAE and Israel, with other countries potentially signing on to it as well. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem, big phrase, man. Promises made, promises kept. And I encourage you to look at the record, because these are things you can look up and they exist. They're hard to find, I know, if you haven't been looking for them, but they're out there. They just don't want you to know that they're out there. They want you to think nothing except Orange Man bad, that Trump's comb over will inevitably take out your social security in 3 years. I mean, that was a big one for like 30 years. I thought they dropped that off the face of the earth, but I guess they figured that nobody really checks the tapes.
Correction is 2,100 yards out.
That's more than a mile. Impossible shot, Chris.
They're not going to go back and look. They're just going to hear Social Security is going to get taken away and go, well, I don't want that. I guess I'll vote for Biden. But it's not true. You need a dictionary to translate just about anything he says. I mean, even on teleprompter, the guy can't read 10 sentences without, the thing.
Created by you know the thing.
I mean, it's sad. It is sad because this is who nearly half the country is placing their hopes and dreams in. This is sad because nearly half the country thinks that this is the guy that, after 47 years in Congress, is now going to affect change. Look at his record. Look at his record of pathological lies since he's been... I mean, every politician lies. He's just stupid about it. They have tried for 4 years to dismantle Donald Trump's administration and his family and his life. And it has not worked.